A deadly epidemic, gripping nations and communities worldwide. But what happens when the cartels, known for their brutal tactics, become embroiled in a war against this highly potent substance? Let's look at the strange wars of cartels against fentanyl. The situation today. In June 2023, the discovery of several bodies buried in a mound of fentanyl pills in Culiacan, Sinaloa, sent shockwaves through the city. This came after a ban was placed on the production and sale of this drug. Fentanyl is a highly potent synthetic opioid developed for pain management in cancer patients. It is known to be up to 100 times more potent than morphine. The DEA stated that fentanyl played a role in about 66% of the 107,622 drug overdose deaths recorded from December 2020 to December 2021. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention further highlights law enforcement agencies' alarming increase in fentanyl-laced pill seizures, which has surged nearly 50-fold since 2018. The connection between the buried bodies and the production and distribution of fentanyl became clear, revealing the aftermath of those who had dared to engage in the business. The perpetrators of this gruesome act were none other than the Los Chapitos, the sons of the notorious drug lord El Chapo, who had declared war against the drug. Among El Chapo's numerous children, 4 have risen to prominence within the cartel's criminal operations: Joaquin Guzman Lopez, Ivan Archivaldo Guzman Salazar, Ovidio Guzman Lopez, and Jesus Alfredo Guzman Salazar. From an early age, Jesus Alfredo, Ivan, and Ovidio were introduced to the inner workings of the Sinaloa cartel by their father and Ismael Zambada Garcia, also known as El Mayo, another influential figure within the organization. Their education in organized crime began as teenagers, learning the intricate nuances of the cartel's operations. Ovidio in particular has attracted considerable attention. In 2012, he was penalized by the United States Treasury Department's Office of Foreign Assets Control, a mark of his growing significance within the Sinaloa cartel. This notoriety reached its peak in 2019, when Mexican security forces attempted to arrest Ovidio in Culiacan, the capital of Sinaloa. The operation was poorly planned, and the news of Ovidio's detention triggered cartel members' immediate and forceful response. Cartel forces swarmed the city, unleashing a wave of violence and chaos, ultimately forcing the president to order Ovidio's release. This incident highlighted the Los Chapitos' influence and immense power within the cartel. The U.S. Treasury Department considers Ovidio an important Sinaloa cartel member, with a crucial role in their illegal activities and operations. Ivan and Jesus Alfredo, the other Chapito brothers, also play integral roles within the cartel. In 2016, they were abducted by DJNG from a restaurant in Puerto Vallarta, Jalisco State. After their release, both sons took different paths, with Jesus Alfredo rising to prominence in the Sinaloa cartel. Remarkably, his name has earned a spot on the DEA's most wanted list, a unique achievement among the sons. Jesus Alfredo, his father, and other cartel leaders faced charges related to drug trafficking in 2015. Moreover, he is believed to have a vital international role within the organization. Reports suggest that in 2016, he spent several months in Medellin, Colombia, under the protection of La Terraza, one of the city's formidable criminal gangs. Joaquin, the fourth son, has maintained a lower profile than his brothers. However, in February 2019, he was indicted alongside Ovidio for trafficking marijuana, methamphetamine, and cocaine into the United States. Although the indictment lacks specific details, prosecutors believed that the trafficking activities took place over a decade, from April 2008 to April 2018, on behalf of the Sinaloa cartel. In the absence of their father, who has been imprisoned since his final arrest and extradition to the United States, the Chapitos find themselves entangled in a power struggle with El Mayo and their uncle El Guano. Control over the cartel's operations is at stake, and the Chapitos, driven by a sense of entitlement as their father's heirs, seek to inherit and expand upon what he created. Although the Chapitos may be more extravagant in their lifestyles, indulging in lavish spending and revelry, they possess a deep understanding of the cartel's operations, making them formidable contenders for supreme control. Fierce battles and acts of violence have marked the struggle for dominance within the cartel. In 2020, Jose Rodrigo Arechiga Gamboa, also known as El Chino Antrax, the ex-chief of the cartel's Antrax hit team and a partner of El Mayo, was discovered dead following his evasion of federal probation oversight in San Diego. It is widely believed that the Chapitos are responsible for his murder. This murder of a longtime ally suggests heightened tensions and underscores the intensity of the power struggle. Tensions escalated further in June 2020 when a protracted shootout erupted between the Chapitos and El Mayos faction on the outskirts of Culiacan. The violent clash resulted in the deaths of 16 individuals, showing the cruelty and determination of both sides in their fight for control. Although the Chapitos remain on the radar of the U.S. authorities, their unwavering determination to exert dominance over the Sinaloa cartel has only grown stronger. In late 2021, the United States Treasury Department increased the reward for information leading to the capture of the four sons to an unprecedented $20 million. This substantial bounty demonstrates the significance of the Chapitos as high-value targets for law enforcement agencies. Additionally, the U.S. Treasury Department has imposed sanctions on the Chapitos under the Kingpin Act, further pressuring their operations and financial networks. Despite the mounting pressure, the Chapitos have relentlessly pursued their goal of securing control over vital drug trafficking corridors. In February 2022, a group of armed individuals believed to be supportive of the Chapitos initiated an assault on the town of Caborca, which is close to the border between the United States and Mexico. The well-organized convoy, consisting of dozens of vehicles, laid siege to the city, overpowering local police forces. The Chapitos forces occupied Caborca for hours, leaving 2 dead and 5 others abducted. Their alliance with the Salazar, a small cartel, has aided their efforts to solidify control over the drug trafficking route spanning Baja California, Sonora, Sinaloa, and the United States-Mexico border. The Chapitos have showcased their increasing firepower and operational capacity in their bid for power. This was further highlighted in March 2023, when a joint operation by the Army and National Guard in Sonora State led to the seizure of one of the largest criminal arsenals ever uncovered in Mexico. The arsenal included millions of ammunition rounds, high-caliber rifles, handguns, grenades, bulletproof vests, and other tactical gear. The discovery of such a substantial amount of weapons and equipment likely brought intense scrutiny and pressure on the Chapitos and the entire cartel. Due to the heavy focus from law enforcement and the significant number of deaths related to fentanyl, it made sense for them to ban the drug. However, this ban may not be purely based on moral reasons. It could be a strategic decision to move their operations to regions where they can work with fewer obstacles. Alternatively, they might be taking a break for a while, as there are rumors that the Sinaloa cartel itself possesses a large warehouse filled with fentanyl. The message from the Los Chapitos was clear: anyone who dares to challenge them will meet a violent end. The fentanyl trade is a dangerous business at the moment, and those who participate do so at their peril. Some people are wondering if the ban on fentanyl production by Los Chapitos will actually stop the production of the drug. While this is a significant move within their organization, it is unlikely to put an end to the trade altogether. The profits to be made from fentanyl are simply too great. Other cartels, such as DJNG, are waiting to step in and fill the void left by Los Chapitos. Interestingly, the accessibility of fentanyl is not limited to the cartels alone. The drug has become so readily available and affordable that it has permeated various levels of society. Individuals and small-scale operators have also become involved in the illicit trade. The seizure of fentanyl pills in Tijuana shows how widespread the drug trade is. Even though many pills were seized, it is just a small amount compared to the total amount of fentanyl available. The Defense Department made this startling discovery in the border city of Tijuana. Acting on a tip about drug trafficking activities, the soldiers staked out a suspicious house, leading to a breakthrough in the fight against this deadly synthetic opioid. Obtaining a search warrant, the soldiers entered the premises and uncovered an astonishing haul. Over 1.83 million fentanyl pills and a staggering 880 pounds of methamphetamine were seized. This discovery is further evidence of the Mexican cartel's use of Tijuana as a hub for producing and distributing counterfeit fentanyl-laced pills, which find their way into the hands of desperate users in the United States. This raid follows a recent operation in Culiacan, the capital of the Sinaloa state, where Mexican soldiers seized nearly 630,000 fentanyl pills. The Drug Enforcement Administration has identified the Jalisco and Sinaloa cartels as the primary Mexican culprits behind the surge in fentanyl-related deaths in the United States, claiming the lives of tens of thousands of Americans. The recent seizure in Tijuana represents one of the largest confiscations of fentanyl in Mexico in recent months. However, the timing of this operation is notable. Just a day prior, President Andrés Manuel López Obrador made a surprising claim that fentanyl is not produced in Mexico. This assertion contradicts the mounting evidence of the country's involvement in the production and trafficking of synthetic opioids. President López Obrador's statement suggests a shifting of blame, implying that the issue lies solely with the United States. Moreover, President López Obrador sought to downplay concerns about security in Mexico, asserting that the country is safer than its northern neighbor. This statement comes in the wake of a high-profile kidnapping incident in the border city of Matamoros, which resulted in the deaths of 2 U.S. citizens and and the rescue of 2 others. The president dismissed U.S. travel warnings and reports of violence in Mexico as part of a conspiracy by conservative politicians and U.S. media outlets to tarnish his administration's reputation. But the ongoing violence, drug trafficking activities, and cartel-related crimes continue to pose significant challenges to Mexico's security and law enforcement efforts. The recent raid in Tijuana displays the complexity of Mexico's struggle against the production and distribution of fentanyl. While the seizure of a substantial quantity of fentanyl and methamphetamine is a significant victory, it also highlights the magnitude of the problem within the country. Amid this struggle, the Guzman brothers have distanced themselves from drug and related activities. On May 4, 2023, they wrote a letter to Azucena Uresti, a respected Mexican journalist. In the letter, they strongly urged the DEA to shift their focus away from their family and toward the actual individuals responsible for operating the recently discovered fentanyl labs in Sinaloa. The brothers firmly deny their involvement as leaders of the Sinaloa cartel and angrily disassociate themselves from any connection to fentanyl production in the area. The Guzman brothers, led by Ivan Guzman Salazar, 40, along with 37-year-old Alfredo Guzman Salazar, 36-year-old Joaquin Guzman Lopez, and 33-year-old Ovidio Guzman Lopez, clarified that they have never been involved in the fentanyl trade, despite the prevalence of fentanyl production in Sinaloa. They claimed that the laboratories busted by authorities have identifiable owners with their names and surnames, urging the DEA to conduct thorough investigations in Sinaloa. In a press conference held by DEA Chief Ann Milgram, she made a statement regarding the elevated danger and influence of Los Chapitos. She deemed them more dangerous and powerful than El Chapo. The brothers voiced their dissatisfaction with how the DEA depicted them, highlighting that these actions tarnished their global image by labeling them a menace. They argued that this portrayal only served the DEA's purpose and had turned into worldwide propaganda, causing harm to their family. Moreover, Los Chapitos criticized social media personalities and content creators who took advantage of their reputation, conducted interviews, and shared opinions without fully understanding their background. They conveyed their discontent with spreading false information, warning about the potential harm of lies being accepted as facts after being repeated many times. Uresti received the 3-page message from Mexican attorney Jose del Refugio Rodriguez, who had previously defended El Chapo. The letter arrived after the U.S. Department of Justice announced new charges in April, claiming that the Guzman brothers had experimented with fentanyl on people before sending it to the United States. The establishment of a joint committee between Mexico and the U.S. to combat the illegal trade of synthetic drugs, weapons, and ammunition has increased the focus on Los Chapitos. This development coincided with an ongoing disagreement between U.S. officials and Mexican President Andrés Manuel López Obrador. While the U.S. claims that Mexico plays a significant role in fentanyl production, López Obrador publicly denies these allegations, further escalating the complex situation. Los Chapitos' recent public statement reflected a sense of remorse as they acknowledged the harmful impact of their silence. They expressed a commitment to being cautious and secretive, hoping that by avoiding public declarations, the negative consequences would gradually fade away. However, their decision to communicate through a written message signifies a shift in their approach and strong denial of the accusations made by U.S. officials. The bigger picture. The ongoing conflict between the Guzman family and the DEA has resulted in conflicting narratives. However, from past experiences, the back and forth between the DEA and the drug crime family may be a result of a bigger war, a war that many are not privy to. You see, Los Chapitos is a faction of one of the largest drug cartels to ever exist, the Sinaloa cartel. And if the Sinaloa cartel's history is anything to go by, it seems that it is using its most powerful allies to fight Los Chapitos. You may be wondering who the powerful allies of the Sinaloa cartel are. Well, these are none other than U.S. law enforcement agencies, as well as Mexican authorities. The obvious question here is, has the drug cartel been secretly working with law enforcement? Well, the answer is probably yes. Although this may sound like a crazy conspiracy theory or a Hollywood script, there have been numerous reports over the years that have shown that the Sinaloa cartel and various law enforcement agencies in the U.S. and Mexico are in cahoots. The relationship between U.S. law enforcement agencies and Mexican cartels can be traced back to one man, Ismael Mario Zambada Garcia, alias El Mayo. El Mayo has been forced to live off the grid because of his role within the Sinaloa cartel that he has become a boogeyman to most people. Those close to him have revealed that he remains quiet during cartel meetings and does not use cell phones. He has gone the extra mile to make sure that he remains in the shadows. Perhaps his connections to U.S. law enforcement have forced him to stay hidden. But one thing is for sure, staying out of the public eye has not only helped El Mayo create the most powerful drug cartel in the world, but it has also helped him stay alive and out of jail. El Mayo was mentored by some of the earliest drug traffickers from Mexico. A notable one was Inez Calderon Quintero, alias the Engineer. Under Quintero's mentorship, El Mayo started a depot where he helped traffic cocaine and heroin into the U.S. The depot was strategic for El Mayo as he tried to avoid the violent aspects of running a cartel. As we will see later in the video, El Mayo's reluctance to directly get involved in cartel violence played a major role in the unlikely partnership between law enforcement and the cartel. By 1970, drug trafficking had become so prominent that it attracted many players. As people tried to control the trade and have the lion's share of the trafficking routes, violence was inevitable. El Mayo was faced with his first major challenge. The industry was becoming more organized, and to survive, strength and size were necessary. One needed to have vast networks and an army of violent, armed thugs to ensure survival. Although he disliked being directly involved in the violence, he had already established himself as a trusted name in the drug business, and backing away from the lucrative business did not seem like an attractive proposition. Luckily, he met a man that would change his fortunes. With his help, El Mayo would soon be sharing the table with the most feared people in drug trafficking. This man was Antonio Cruz Vazquez. Vazquez was a mysterious man in his own right. In fact, reports suggest that he was crucial in fostering relationships between El Mayo and law enforcement agencies, such as the CIA. According to reports obtained by U.S. law enforcement officials, Vazquez is said to have been working for the CIA, while others claimed he represented Cuban Army intelligence. When Nevada narcotics officers questioned him about these reports after his arrest on January 28, 1978, Vazquez refused to discuss them. What is known for a fact is that he was 32 years old when Fidel Castro came to power and became a captain in the Cuban National Police Force. However, he disappeared in an event still shrouded in mystery. Vazquez and El Mayo met when the former was on a trip to Mexico. He met and married Modesta Zambada, El Mayo's daughter. This marriage would prove to be a blessing in disguise for El Mayo. At that time, he dominated heroin smuggling from Mexico into the United States. However, even though he had been in the drug business for years, he didn't have a place to sell them. His was to help get the drugs into the U.S. for others. And with his sights set on the top spot in drug trafficking, El Mayo needed to control all parts of the supply chain. Enter his new partner, Vazquez. With his connections in the U.S., Vazquez helped his new partner find a market for his heroin in Las Vegas and L.A. It is El Mayo's partnership with Vazquez that may have contributed to El Mayo's success later in life. You see, Vazquez was not a drug lord, so he did not know how to run a cartel. However, he was well versed in other important areas, which he made sure to pass on to his father-in-law. Apart from logistics, El Mayo learned the importance of alliances over war. El Mayo's perspective on how to run a cartel became different from what was being practiced at the time. They bought cops and bribed airport baggage attendants. In fact, as we will see, the alliances that El Mayo has made have kept him in business to this day. They ran a successful operation until Vazquez was arrested in 1978. The two had relocated to the U.S. with their families and were living lavishly as money from drug trafficking was coming in thick and fast. However, this put cops hot on their trail. After Vazquez was arrested, El Mayo's name came into the cops' radar for the first time. From then on, he adopted a low profile, which is a principle he practices to this day. Nevertheless, he would inherit his partner's contacts and operations while he served a 15-year jail sentence. As his reputation and business grew, so did his appetite to get to the top. But at the time, someone else was calling the shots at the top of the trafficking business. Miguel Angel Felix Gallardo, aka El Patrino, who co-founded the Guadalajara cartel. El Patrino invited El Mayo to work with the Guadalajara cartel after seeing his effectiveness in the trade. It was during this time that he became close to Joaquin El Chapo Guzman. Everything went on well as the cartel continued to make millions of dollars each year. However, trouble started in the 1980s after the capture and murder of DEA agent Enrique Camarena Salazar. The agent had provided Mexican soldiers with intel that led to the destruction of a 500-acre marijuana plantation with an estimated annual production of $8 billion. His death led to mass public outcry from U.S. citizens, which increased pressure on governments to act. Ultimately, this led to an increased threat from U.S. law enforcement. Felix Gallardo was forced to divide his cartel into smaller divisions to survive. This division of the organization in the late 1980s led to the cartel essentially being made up of several smaller cartels that controlled their own territories and trafficking corridors with their own bosses. This would make it less likely for the whole organization to be brought down at the same time. One of these cartels was the Sinaloa cartel, with the city of Culiacan acting as its headquarters. At the helm of the new cartel cartel were El Chapo and El Mayo. El Chapo had noticed El Mayo's expertise and decided to invite him as a partner in the new organization. Reports suggest that El Chapo was actually forced by circumstances to bring El Mayo into the organization. At first, he and Hector Luis Palma Salazar headed the Sinaloa cartel. During this time, the Sinaloa cartel started warring over trade routes with other cartels. El Chapo turned to the one man he knew would help him navigate his problem, El Mayo, who at the time had become a freelancer. Having no success using violence, El Chapo sought El Mayo's expertise. You see, El Mayo had learned how to become a master negotiator from his son-in-law, Vasquez. So unlike El Chapo, he did not have to use violence to get what he wanted. As a freelancer, El Mayo had managed to work for rival cartels and working independent contracts, all while staying clear of the government's radar. It even helped the Juarez cartel expand until his influence led to a merger with the Sinaloa cartel to fight rivals such as the Gulf Cartel and Tijuana Cartel. With El Mayo at the helm, the Sinaloa cartel has only grown stronger and more influential. However, questions about why he has become so successful have grown as the years have passed. Numerous independent investigations as well as testimonies from whistleblowers have revealed shocking details about the success of the Sinaloa cartel. One of the hardest pills for people to swallow is that the U.S. and Mexican governments are in bed with the Sinaloa cartel. All this can be tied back to El Mayo's connections to the CIA through his business partner and son-in-law, Antonio Cruz Vasquez. Although this is not confirmed, it is likely that these contacts opened the door for El Mayo to form ties with the Mexican Army, ICE, and DEA. There have been numerous reports that have revealed shady business between the cartels and government agencies. Over the years, the U.S. National Public Radio has aired several reports alleging that federal police and the Mexican military are collaborating with the Sinaloa cartel. In particular, a 2009 report claimed that the government was helping the Sinaloa cartel take over the Juarez Valley area from the Juarez cartel. Generally, El Mayo's playbook involved working with the government to reduce competition. It was a win-win situation for both sides. While the Sinaloa cartel would become more powerful because of little competition, the government would earn more favor with the people. This is because cartel violence would be reduced by bringing the number of cartels down to one, and most importantly, the government would still maintain a considerable amount of influence over the remaining cartel. NPR's reporters interviewed dozens of officials and ordinary people during the groundbreaking investigation, with a former Juarez police commander claiming that his entire department was working for the Sinaloa cartel and helping it to fight other groups. He further asserted that the Sinaloa cartel had bribed high-ranking army officials. Data on the low arrest rate of Sinaloa cartel members compared to other groups was also cited as evidence of collusion. A Mexican reporter was also cited saying that the public had accused the military of murder on the cartel's behalf on numerous occasions. The U.S. trial of ex-Juarez police captain Manuel Fierro Mendez, who testified that he had worked for the Sinaloa cartel, has also caused public outrage in Mexico and the U.S. According to the ex-police captain, he acted as the spokesman for El Chapo in his dealings with U.S. authorities. He revealed that there was a symbiotic relationship in which each side made use of the other. Fierro Mendez would provide tips and confirm leads for the U.S. authorities, while agents from Immigration and Customs Enforcement, IC, would arrest Sinaloa's enemies. It seems El Chapo was keen to learn from El Mayo, as Fierro Mendez revealed that El Chapo always made clear that whenever possible, he wanted to avoid violent confrontation. Apart from ICE, the DEA was also heavily involved with the Sinaloa cartel's dirty dealings. An anonymous former Sinaloa member turned informant and former DEA agent revealed that Humberto Loya Castro, El Chapo's legal advisor, had become a key informant for the DEA. Since the 1990s, before he became an official DEA informant in 2004, Loya Castro had been providing the agency with crucial information that helped bring down the Sinaloa cartel's main rival, the Tijuana cartel, and led to the death of Arturo Beltran Leyva, the leader of a splinter group within the Sinaloa cartel. Such information protected Loya Castro from prosecution, while diverting DEA attention away from Sinaloa's top leadership and toward their rivals. Court documents also show that the DEA made deals with the cartel's leadership to guarantee their safety from extradition and prosecution in the U.S., and to keep the cartel's drug operations running smoothly, in exchange for information that could be used to take down rival drug organizations. Leaked emails revealed statements from a Mexican diplomat suggesting that Mexican officials believed the United States was helping the Sinaloa cartel's drug smuggling efforts into the United States and protecting the cartel while attacking its rivals to reduce violence between Mexican drug cartels. The BBC aired Secrets of Mexico's Drug War in March 2015 that discussed the U.S. government's Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives Operation Fast and Furious, which which facilitated the sale of firearms by licensed dealers to illegal buyers working on behalf of Mexican drug cartel leaders, in particular the Sinaloa cartel. The BBC also covered the story of Vicente Zambada, claiming that the leaders of the Sinaloa cartel had provided information to U.S. federal agents about rival Mexican drug gangs in exchange for immunity from prosecution under a deal between the Mexican and U.S. governments. This is where the story becomes even more interesting. During his trial, Zambada's court filings claimed that federal DEA agents gave him, El Chapo, and other Sinaloa leaders complete freedom to operate their drug business without interference, as long as they snitched on other cartels. According to Zambada's attorney, for a long time, Sinaloa leaders helped authorities capture or kill thousands of rivals. However, prosecutors denied having signed a deal with Zambada. Instead, they admitted that the U.S. had a signed cooperation agreement with a different Sinaloa cartel leader. According to them, any agreement with a cartel leader is controversial, but may sometimes be deemed necessary. Prosecutors also revealed that the deal was struck with Loya Castro. However, this did not make a lot of sense. Loya Castro was not involved in the drug trade. He was only El Chapo's lawyer. He did not have to disclose information to the DEA because he had attorney-client privilege. Seeing that El Chapo is currently behind bars, one can only assume that the Sinaloa cartel leader who was offered this deal was none other than El Mayo. After all, he has always been a master negotiator. Perhaps this is why there is rivalry in the Sinaloa cartel ranks. El Chapo's sons may feel that their father was betrayed by El Mayo and now wants to take control of the cartel's operations against the last remaining member of the so-called Old Guard. Seeing this, El Mayo may have turned to his greatest allies for help. Tying El Chapitos to the fentanyl crisis may lead to a heavy crackdown of the group, once again leaving El Mayo with no competitors. As the story unfolds, the true extent of Los Chapitos' involvement in fentanyl distribution and their actual position within the Sinaloa cartel remains a subject of intense scrutiny and speculation. Many individuals harbor a deep distrust of law enforcement agencies, including the DEA. They believe these agencies are corrupt and ineffective. It is clear that the drug trade was a constantly changing and evolving business. The traffickers were always finding new ways to adapt to challenges and exploit weaknesses in the system.